Welcome to our first lesson on logic. This one's titled Living in the Media Age, Spotting Fallacies. And the reason why I called it this is because today we are bombarded by fallacies in media, especially on sites like Facebook, where people just don't understand how logic works. And that's how bad information gets basically perpetuated. So let's start off, like we must start off any first lesson, with some definitions. I know, not your favorite, but logic is basically just the study of methods and principles of reasoning. It's just the idea of thinking things through, quote unquote, logically. An argument is something that uses a set of facts that we usually call premises to support a conclusion. And then a fallacy is a deceptive argument. It's basically an argument that gets to a conclusion that is not really supported well by those premises or assumptions. So let's look at some of the different types of fallacy structures that you're going to get bombarded with in the real world. The appeal to popularity is very common. This is where if many people believe something to be true, then therefore it must be true. A false cause is the idea that if something comes before something else, it must therefore cause that second thing, right? So if A comes before B, then thus A must cause B. And we'll go through some examples of these after we go through all of the definitions. The appeal to ignorance, this is a really popular one I see a lot, where just because there's no proof that P is true, therefore P must be false. And that's ridiculous. The hasty generalization, this is the idea that if A and B are linked in one or a few instances, then again, therefore A causes B or vice versa. There's a lot of things where there's these false causations where they think something causes something else. Even in statistics, when you get a correlation, one of the big things we say in statistics is correlation does not equal causation. It's very hard to show that something causes something else without a rigorous scientific experiment. Okay, how about limited choice? The idea that if P is false, therefore only Q can be true. So it's kind of the idea that, well, it's got to be one of two things, thinking that there's only two choices, and that's just not the case. The appeal to emotion is the idea that if P is associated with a positive emotional response, it must be true. So it's, in human nature, we like to think good things are true. So that's kind of the appeal to emotion. The personal attack. I have a problem with the person or group claiming P, therefore P is not true. Boy, we see that a lot, especially in today's political climate, where just because one group doesn't like the other group, then therefore everything that comes out of that other group's mouth must not be true. And then circular reasoning is the idea that P is true, and then P is restated in different words. Basically, the argument states the conclusion. They're using P to prove P, and that's again false. The last couple fallacy structures is the red herring or diversion one, where P is related to Q, and I have an argument concerning Q, therefore P is true. It's kind of like, hey, look over here, and because I've got an argument for this thing, and then this other thing is kind of related to it, now this other thing must be true. And then the straw man, I have an argument concerning a distorted version of P. Therefore, I hope you are fooled into concluding I have an argument concerning the real version of P. Okay, so let's look at some examples. The appeal to popularity. Ford makes the best pickup trucks in the world. More people drive Ford pickups than any other light truck. The premise is that more people drive Ford pickups than any other light truck, and the conclusion is Ford makes the best pickup trucks in the world. This argument suffers from the fallacy of appeal to popularity because just because more people buy something just because it's popular doesn't make it the best, right? So that's the fallacy in that claim. How about I placed the quartz crystal on my forehead and 5 minutes later my headache was gone. This crystal made my headache go away. So the premise is that they placed the crystal on their forehead, and then 5 minutes later, their headache went away. Those two things are premises, i.e. those two things, are true and they happen. And the conclusion is, well, because those two things happen, therefore there must be a relationship between the two, i.e. the crystal made their headache go away. And we all know that there's no evidence to support that just because it happened, right? So that's a fallacy argument. How about the appeal to ignorance? Scientists have not found any concrete evidence of aliens visiting Earth. Therefore, anyone who claims to have seen a UFO must be hallucinating. So the premise is there's no proof that aliens have visited Earth, and so the conclusion is that aliens have not visited Earth. So just because we don't have proof of something not happening, it's really hard to prove a negative, basically. And this is kind of how people still think the Earth is flat because they don't believe that anybody has proved that it isn't flat. And that's the appeal to ignorance idea. 2 cases of childhood leukemia have occurred along the street where the high voltage power lines run. Therefore, the power lines must be the cause of these illnesses. So that's a hasty generalization. Just because you have 2 cases of leukemia doesn't necessarily mean that the power lines are the cause. Now, the power lines could be the cause, but you just need more data. That's basically the idea of a hasty generalization is if you start to see a pattern, you jump to conclusions. The limited choice example, you don't support the president, so you are not a patriotic American, basically saying that those are your only 2 choices. Either you have to support the president or you're not patriotic. So that's the idea of there's no third choice where it's completely patriotic to not support the president, right? I mean, that's what democracy is all about. In ads for Michelin tires, a picture of a baby is shown with the words "because so much is riding on your tires." And I actually remember these commercials, the appeal to emotion. And the premise is if you love your baby, the conclusion is you should buy Michelin tires. What the heck does those two have to do with each other, right? There's no correlation between those. Just because you love your baby doesn't mean you should buy Michelin tires, right? So this is an attempt to evoke an emotional response to get you to kind of correlate one with the other. So that's an appeal to emotion. Personal attack. So Gwen says you should stop drinking because it's hurting your grades, endangering people when you drink and drive, and destroying your relationship with your family. Merle says I've seen you drink a few too many on occasion yourself. So basically, Merle has resorted to attacking Gwen personally rather than arguing logically. So we call this fallacy a personal attack. So rather than coming back and trying to argue Merle's side of the story, they just turn around and make a personal attack on the person coming at them. And it doesn't even have to be, he didn't even have to come back and say, well, you drink too. It could just, that makes it a more powerful attack because you think, oh, well, yeah, I guess I do. So there's nothing wrong with it, right? But any kind of personal attack where you're deflecting back on the person making the argument is a fallacy. Circular reasoning. Society has an obligation to provide health insurance because health care is a right of citizenship. Do you see how that says the same thing, right? So society has to provide health insurance because health care is a right of citizenship. That's a big circular statement. So that's the idea of circular reasoning. It's like, I can't come up with another example. Then these are not my examples, folks. These are not my political viewpoints, yes or no. These are just the ones that, come up from the textbook, but it's just a good idea or a good example of circular reasoning. The red herring. You should not continue to fund cloning research because there are so many ethical issues involved. Decisions are based on ethics, and we cannot afford to have too many ethical loose ends. So the argument begins with this conclusion, basically saying that we should not fund cloning research. But then after that, the discussion's all about ethics, right? It has nothing to do with what's wrong with cloning. It just says ethics is a good thing and we should always, abide by ethics. But nowhere have you actually proven that there's, a correlation or a connection between cloning and ethics. So that's a diversion where you just talk about ethics instead of talking about cloning. And then the straw man example, suppose that the mayor of a large city proposes decriminalizing drug possession in order to reduce overcrowding in jails and save money on enforcement. His challenge in the upcoming election says the mayor doesn't think there's anything wrong with drug use, but I do. So you can see that the mayor didn't say anything about drug use being acceptable. His proposal for decriminalization is an idea of solving the problem of overcrowding jails. And it tells us nothing about his views on drugs, but the speaker has distorted their views, and then any argument based on a distortion of someone's beliefs is called a straw man argument. And I'm sure you can remember seeing examples of all of these in especially recent politics. So, 5 steps to evaluating media information. always consider the source. Is the source of the information clear, and does the source have credibility on the issue? And you should also always think about, um, do they have a dog in the fight, so to speak, or do they have a horse in the race, right? Do they have a reason to want to be biased, or do they have a reason to want you to think a certain way? So always consider the source of the information, because that could lend them to basically misrepresenting things. Check the date. Can you determine when the information was written? Is it still relevant, or is it outdated? So if you come across some data, that's great, but if the data was from like the 1960s, it's probably not still relevant today, depending on the situation. Can you validate the accuracy? Can you basically validate the information from other sources? Do you have good reason to believe it's accurate? Does it contain anything that makes you suspicious, right? So again, that's thinking about where the data comes from. Do the people who collected the data have some sort of hidden agenda? That kind of stuff. So number 4, watch for hidden agendas, right? It's really easy to fall prey to that. So that's a big one to look forward to. Don't miss the big picture. Even if a piece of media information passes all the above tests, step back and consider whether it makes sense. For example, does it conflict with other things you think are true? And if so, how can you resolve the conflict? So always try and think about the big picture, because oftentimes they'll go down a little tiny narrow rabbit hole and they'll present some information that seems really accurate. But when you step back and look at it in conjunction with everything else, you go, wait a minute, that doesn't really fit with larger things. So last couple examples, Mars and the night sky. So evaluate the Mars claim from the chapter opening. So on August 27, Mars will look as large and bright as the full moon. Don't miss it, because no one alive today will ever see this again. Now consider the source. The original source of the claim is not given, which means you have no way of knowing if the source is, an authority in this, realm. Do they know anything about celestial bodies and astrophysics and how things work? So you should already be thinking, I better double check. Check the date. The claim sounds specific because it cites August 27th for the event, but no year is given, so you have no way to know if the claim is intended to apply for this year, every year, or a particular past or future year. Validating the accuracy. It's easy to look this up. You'll find numerous websites that tell you it's untrue. Of course, you should always check the validity of these websites. If you find information from NASA, well, that's pretty good, right? If you find the information from, some Joe Citizen on Facebook, unless they're a NASA scientist, I probably would think they probably don't know what they're talking about. Watch for hidden agendas. I can't really see a hidden agenda in somebody telling you to go look at the night sky. It's not like they're going to make money off it or anything like that. And then don't miss the big picture. So you want to stand back and think about the claim. Mars is a planet orbiting the sun, while the moon orbits the Earth, so therefore the moon is closer. So even if it's at its closest, it's going to be a long way away. So it would have to be, super, super large for that extra distance to really make up for it. But, it's about 150 times as far away. So Mars would have to be basically 150 times the size of the moon, which it isn't. So therefore, this claim is bupkis. Okay, and that's basically fallacies that we have to look out for in today's media.